Welcome to Model Kit Stuff, where you'll find all of this. Welcome to Model Kit Stuff, and welcome to my next build, which is this Airfix starter set, the 1:72 scale RNLI Shannon class lifeboat. This is a brand new 2024 new tool kit, designed specifically to be a starter set. It comes with glue, paints, paintbrushes. So I'm going to be building this. I also have the separate decal sheet that is also available for it, and that allows you to build your very own version of a lifeboat, maybe the one that's closest to you or the one that's your favourite, whatever you want to do. So there is additional decals available, but you don't need them to be able to build the kit because there's decals included for this first lifeboat. Now I'm going to be using the extra decals. I'm going to be building the Scarborough one, and yeah, what we're going to do through this build is I'm going to build it the way I want to build it, but as we go through it I will be giving some tips for those people who maybe are building a model for the first time or are fairly new to modelling, maybe built one or two. So I'll be giving some hints and tips and offering some advice throughout the build. We're not going to do this blow by blow. I'm just going to crack on with the build and show you how it comes together. Right, now then. The box has a flying hour on top, so if this is your first model or you're new to modelling or it's your first Airfix kit, you want to keep that. You want to go onto the Hornby, the Airfix website, I should say. Airfix is owned by Hornby Hobbies. If you go onto the Airfix website, you can register there, and any purchases you make in the future you can get hobby points on, but they also have an Airfix members club, and if you join that, you can collect these and then trade them in for free kits. So it is worth doing. So maybe you ask someone to get you the membership as a gift or something like that. But yeah, it is worth it in my view. The kit itself is aimed for anyone aged 8 and above. My daughter, when she was 8, she certainly built starter sets and managed to do them with no great issues. So everyone should be okay. On the back of our box we have our paint instructions, so you need to at least cut this bit out and keep it, even if you don't wish to keep the box, although the box does have some nice imagery on the front, and if you do buy the kit, 90p from the purchase cost gets donated to the RNLI, which is really nice. It's a charity that I think everyone in the UK supports. So it does tell us that we get these 6 paints. Now in mine I have a couple of paints, the 18 and the 27, where I have 2 pots, so I've actually got more than that. And I also have a number 11, which is silver, which isn't listed there, so I don't know whether that is then listed in the instructions and everyone gets it, or there's an extra pot being dropped in a bag by accident for me. Don't know. You'll also get some poly glue or poly cement that's in a tube. I will show you how to use that in the build, but we will also use some different adhesives as well. You also get a couple of paint brushes. So if you are a brush painter, I will be giving you some tips on how to go about that. But yeah, so you don't have everything you need in here to build the kit. You need a way of removing the parts from their trees. So typically that's done with a pair of sprue cutters or side cutters or sprue snips. They've got all sorts of different names. And you are going to need to remove the nubs off the plastic parts. I will show you all this as we get going. So you're going to need, at the very least, an emery board, something like this, a nail file that you can get in a supermarket will do the job. And you probably want to have some form of craft knife as well, because that's going to be handy for removing some seams. So those are the very basic things that you're going to need. There is, if you go onto the Airfix website, you can, if you look around, you can find that they do sell some starter tool packs, which will probably give you everything you need. The other thing that you're probably going to want if you're brand new to the hobby and this is your first kit is to get yourself some toothpicks. These are really cheap. Again, you can pick them up in supermarkets. They cost next to nothing. Somewhere between 50p and £1 for a pot, which will give you a good number. And they're going to be handy for applying glue, stirring paint. You're also going to want to get yourself some form of container for putting water in, which you can use for cleaning your brushes, thinning your paint. And you're going to need some tissue paper. I use toilet roll. Some form of tissue paper for taking away any liquids like additional water when you put your decals on. I'd also recommend, if you're going to be using this glue, that you get yourself some tops, like I use milk bottle tops, that you can put a little bit of glue in, and then you can dip your cocktail stick in to apply the glue. I've still got glue on there from a previous job. So yeah, that is pretty much all the stuff you're going to need. Let's get on with our build. Right then, our build starts with the display base, and I am going to do this slightly differently to the instructions when it comes to painting. I love how they lay out the instructions for starter sets. We've got a little picture there showing you where the parts are to remove them. Brilliant for, you know, an 8-year-old building their first kit. Smashing. Really, really good. So I'm just going to remove these. Now my tip is, if you're new to modelling, is you cut away from the sprue a little bit. Now if you've not got side cutters, you can do it with a knife, but it's a little bit harder, so be careful, most importantly, that you don't cut yourself, but also that you don't damage the part, which was equally not something you want to do. And then we've got all these little tabs on here. It does show you in the instructions where to glue, but it doesn't tell you where to remove these little tabs, where it does elsewhere in the build, but not on this bit. So we're just going to get in and remove these. These strange little things are location points for the ejectors on the tooling. So when the plastic parts are moulded, they're moulded in generally a two-piece tool. You can get more complexity in tooling than that, but generally a two-piece tool, and then they have these little pins that come out which help push the two parts away and push the plastic out of the tool as the two parts separate. So yeah, so that's what these are for. And it's to stop you getting those ejector pin marks actually on the plastic. Okay, so I think I have removed all of those. So that's all those all those gone. Now, if you're a more experienced modeler, you may wish to deal with this here. So let's see if we can zoom you in a little bit. You can see that there. So that's called sink. Basically, the plastic has shrunk back when it's cooled. There's different reasons that can create that. Not leaving it in the tool long enough before you remove it is one, but commonly it happens where you've got plastic behind it and it all just contracts a little bit. You can see we've also got some there, but I'm not going to worry about that because that's hidden. Now, if you're a new modeler, just don't worry about it. If you paint it, this is sort of satin finish on the plastic, and so it's reflecting in my light and it's visible. When you paint it and paint it matte, it perhaps won't be. Now, if you want to, you can fill this. You can put a putty in and sand it back and get it nice and flat. I'm actually not going to bother, and you'll see why when you see what I'm going to do with painting this. But let me get the other parts out for the assembly and clean them up, and then we'll talk about gluing and cleaning up the parts. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you things when we first do it, and then I won't talk about them again. So I'll show you cleaning up this part, and then unless there's something particularly important to point out, I won't show you sanding parts again. So that's the way I'm going to tackle this. Just some tips for the beginners as we go, but mainly just get on with building it and having some fun. So they've done a lovely job of this display base. It's got little rivet details on and things like that, which I think will look really cool when under a wash, which is why I've decided to go slightly differently than the instructions. So the instructions are going to have you paint this in 15, which is the same blue that is on the hull. You could also paint it in a black, which would be the same colour as the lower hull if you wanted. But I'm actually going to paint mine yellow. So it's going to really stand out against the hull, and it's going to look like the sort of frame that the boat might sit on if it was being in maintenance or out for delivery and just finished in the factory or something like that. So I'm gonna show mine as being on a frame. Now the boat itself, being a lifeboat, is extremely well maintained. It's not going to be messy. You've not really got much in the way of opportunity for any weathering. There's a few areas where there's grills and stuff where we can do a little bit of additional shadow. So I'm going to put my weathering in onto the base, and I think that will look cool. Right, so you've cleaned your parts up. You can only put the parts in the right place because they've done a pin on one and a tab on the other. So always important to test fit your parts, and as we'd expect from a new Airfix kit, no problem at all. Yeah, that goes in well. But what we don't want is all these unsightly lumps left where the ejector pins were, or these seams. So if I bring that closer to the camera, you can see there's a line there. That's the seam. It's from where the two tools were joined together. It leaves a little bit of plastic that sort of extrudes itself out. So all the way around where we can see a seam, we want to take it off. But you've got two ways of doing it. Let me get my knife. So the first way is to use the back of your knife. I tend not to use the blade because firstly it dulls the blade, so you're going to have to then go and resharpen it. But also what you really want is this edge, so you can do it just equally as well with the back of the knife. So you can do that and scrape it down. Which will do the job. And on small areas that can be really helpful, but where you've got a big exposed flat area, then you want to get in with your sanding stick or your emery board if you're a beginner, and just sand the whole thing smooth. And you'll see when it's smooth, because if I stop there, you can see some of the plastic is still shiny and some of it has matted down. It's matted down where you've come in contact with the abrasive. So where it's shiny, you haven't. So you can see that we've got high points, and that means it's not flat yet. So when it goes all matte and there's no shiny, that's when you've sanded everything and you've pretty much got it flat. It takes a little bit of experience to get used to sanding things and how to do that. So don't worry if you don't get it spot on. First few times you try it, it will come to you. Yeah, there we go. So that is pretty much done now. You can see there's no shiny areas. We've got rid of the lump where the tab was, and we've got rid of the seam. So that's what you need to do. Go all the way around where you can see a seam. I'm not going to talk to you about sanding technique. That's something for another video. But yeah, just get rid of those seams, make it all look nice and flush, and then when you come to paint it, it will look so much better, 100% better than if you'd left the seams on. Right, I'm going to carry on doing that, and I'll see you in a moment. Okay, my parts are all cleaned up. I'm going to show you how to work with this tube glue if that's what you're doing. Decant a small amount into a bottle top. I like to use something that's got a lip. It just make sure it's all contained and that you don't have any issues. It can be a little bit whiffy, this glue, so ventilated area if you can, or use it, and then once you're finished with it, get rid of the glue so that you've not got the smell. I'm used to the smell, quite like the smell actually. And then using a cocktail stick, we're just going to apply it on the area that we want to make contact with, where our join's going to be. Don't need a lot, you just need to smear it a little bit on. It'll instantly start feeling a bit sticky. All that's going on is it's a hot glue, it's starting to melt into the plastic. So, and we can plop that in. Job done. And the good thing about these tube glues is they do give you a bit more control. They are thicker glues than some you can get. Liquid polys are thinner, but for these sort of jobs they're absolutely fine. We'll use the same glue on the hull as well of the ship. So where you're covering big areas, I like tube glues. A lot of modelers don't use them and complain about them, but yeah, I quite like them for certain jobs, and ship hulls are definitely one of those. But there you go, you can see that's in. Don't squeeze the parts together, you'll make it all ooze out. You just want it to sit there and let it do its thing. Now the drying time is a bit slower with tube glues than other glues, so you can get liquid glues in bottles and they dry quicker. You can also get glues that come through a needle, and they sort of dry a bit slower than the liquid glue, but a bit quicker than the tube glue. So your drying time all depends on what you're using. Okay, I'm not going to show you how to use glues again, but you now know how I go about using the tube glue. Nice and easy to work with. Okay, bringing the hull halves together. We've glued in the supports first. They've done a really good job of the of this. It locates and sits nicely, so I'll just put a little bit of glue on the mating points there. And then I'm using the tube glue still. We're just gonna spread that on the mating points. So the instructions clearly show you where the glue needs to be. So nice and easy. One thing I'd say is be careful. This tube glue can be a bit stringy, and if you're not careful, you can get it somewhere you really don't want it. I've got some strings there. Now you have time to do this. It's not the quickest drying glue, but it's also you've not got forever, so you need to sort of get your stuff together and be ready to crack on with it. And don't worry about having too much on those supports. Okay, and let's just bring that together. There we go. I'm just going to put a little clip on that there to hold that together nicely. Yeah, that goes together well. There we go, just making sure everything is nicely lined up. We're not creating issues for ourselves. Okay, and then I'm going to pinch that together as well. It's a little tricky because the keel isn't very wide. Well, there we go. Okay, the method of joining the two halves, they've put these little cutouts in, which is creating gaps and creating work basically. If they just left them smooth, two smooth halves like the rest of it is, it'd have gone together better. But yeah, okay. We can, whilst that's drying, we can put the transom in, which goes in like so, and then we'll have a bit of clean up to do after that. So I'm going to glue the transom in, and then we can leave that to dry. We won't do any clean up until we've got the deck in. Okay, we're looking at the main superstructure now, and in step 4 we have these parts. There is also a little steering wheel there that I'm going to put on later on. I want to just check the colour. I suspect the colour isn't orange, that it's actually black or black and silver, or maybe black and orange, I don't know. Well, let's just talk about this part first. To keep it a skill level 1, Airfix have moulded this all in one, and it's a really stunning part, lots of lovely detail, very nicely done. If they were doing this at a greater skill level, then I think they would have broken this down into maybe 4 pieces or something like that, but that would have made it more tricky to build. So I understand why they've done it. The downside of doing it this way, and you know, you've got nice thin plastic walls here, is that you've got quite a bit of flex in the part. And when you put this rear bulkhead in, I've just been dry fitting it to see, you can see that the gaps are substantial. So you have to pinch this in and bring this together. Now, I've done some messing around with dry fitting, and following the instructions of building this up first is the right way to go. And then you put the whole structure in, and we're going to have to pinch it together when we glue it and potentially clamp it. So you need to understand how you're going to clamp that together. So you want to pinch it together at these two bottom points here, and that'll hold it all in when it glues. So it will come together really nicely, but and this is why we test fit things to work out if there's anything particular we need to do. So it's not an issue. I'm just highlighting it for the newer modelers amongst you. It's gonna look lovely. Right, there is also a part, this part here, that goes in on the sidewall, and they show you in the instructions. Let me just show you. They show you putting glue on this area here, all these thin yellow lines. It's utter nonsense. You put the glue on the part and then put the part in. So don't try and draw glue on the lines. You're not going to get it in the right place. You're going to ruin your model. It's just nonsense. So put the glue on the part and then make the part. And I think there's a tab here that has to go into there. So you're going to put that in after the bulkhead's in. So I've not actually test fitted that. So let's just do that while the camera's running. So if I put that in, pinch it together, then yeah, that will just slot in from underneath, and it puts it in the right position. So I would go in, leaving it separated, slot it in and push it back, and that'll hold it all into place. Oh, if you've got liquid poly, just place the part and then put your liquid poly in and let it capillary in. For those of you that don't understand the term capillary, it means basically the glue will work its way into the gap. So yeah, something like that. So we can put that part in last. So we're going to build this up next. I have test fitted it, and it does all fit. This part fits in quite tightly. So if you get it up lined up right, it does fit in, but it's quite a tight little fit. And then you've got this bulkhead here, which has a little location tab, and then you can squeeze it in. So let's do that. Let's get some glue to hand. And what we're going to do is we're going to fit the part and then glue it in. So there we go. So I can put some glue in at the back here where we can see the tab. That'll work its way into the joint, and then at the back here this won't be seen because it goes against the bulkhead, and underneath there like that. So there's no need to put any glue on any visible surfaces, and we can just hold that together like so. Some of these parts want to fight you back a little bit, so just hold it for a moment, let it grab, and then you can move on to the next part. Right, little tip for you now on this piece. This is B14. So there is a location tab here, and it gets in the way a little bit when you're fitting it into here. So what you want to do to make life easier for you is just cut a little angle on the end here. So where you've got, let's get that to focus, this end here, just going to cut a little angle on it. It's not going to affect your ability to locate the part, but what you'll see as I put it in, it's just going to help it slide in. So you locate it into the mating tab at the back, this opening here. and then you can push that behind it. If you don't trim it off, the corner of that location line catches on that and you can't push it together. So that's the way to do that. You can see that went in nice and easy, and we can now glue that in. I'm going to glue it in from the back at the bottom end, and then at the top here we can just glue it in on the inside there. So that's that piece in, and we'll just hold it together, give it a gentle squeeze, make sure it's nice and tight as it glues together. So nice and easy. We've already test fitted this last bit, so the next thing we need to do is install this into the main cabin. Okay, installing the rear bulkhead and the structure. This little tab here, this location tab on the back, that pushes right up to the top of this, and if you push it right up to the top, then this is all perfectly located. So that's the way to do it. So get that pushed in, make sure that that is on the outside, not the inside, otherwise you're gonna not fit it properly. And then we pinch those two parts together, check that it's in nicely there, which it is, and then I'm going to clamp it. Before we glue it. Just make sure everything's nicely fitted there. You don't want to over tighten it, and that'll cause things to bow and bulge. So just pushing everything into place, making sure it's where it should be, nice and tight, and now we can glue that in. Okay, so that should be okay. We'll leave that a little bit of time to dry. If you take your clamp off too quickly, sorry I didn't get that in shot, did I? If you take the clamp off too quickly, it will spring apart. So you want to make sure you've left plenty of time for that glue to adhere nicely. So I'll probably leave that for at least half an hour to dry off. And whilst that's drying off, we can put this piece in. So we can just pop that into place there, and then run some glue into the bottom there. Which will hold it nicely into place, and some glue in that there, and yeah, there we go. We're nice and done, and that looks good. So we can leave that all to dry, put that to one side, and we can now clean up these parts ready for installing, although I'm going to want to spray paint this before we put the glass in, so we'll perhaps leave the glass for later. We can't test fit it yet. This part I've already done, so we can move past that. So then we're on general fittings and bits and pieces. So actually we can go back to tidying up the hull. So let's have a look at that. So I'm using perfect plastic putty to do some filling on the hull. We've got one or two little gaps and unevenness and stuff around this edge here, so just want to sort that out. Couple of little gaps at the front. as well, so we just want to sort that out. And then under here, this really just needs a sand to level it off. But these here, for some reason they put slopes on them and just looks wrong. So you're either going to display the model that way, which looks right, or you're going to try and sort out this thing. So I don't like what they've done here. It was needless. It doesn't add anything to the ability to construct it easier, and it takes away from the finished look. So I'm not happy about what they've done there. I am going to put some filler in and see if I can square it off. But inevitably, I'll probably end up displaying it the other side. So I'm simply working some filler in using this old knife blade, which I've used for years for this task, and make sure it's been pushed in so the filler's actually filled the gap, and then you overfill it so you've got something to sand back against. Now, if you're new to modelling, you don't have to do this. You can just sand these flush with your emery board, and that will be good enough. What you want is to get rid of the lip and make this nice and smooth all the way around, as it is on the actual vessel. Okay, I'm going to carry on filling and I'll come back to you in a bit. Right, so I've put the hull together. You can see there's been a little bit of filling along this line here, and we needed a little bit at the back, but if you're a beginner, don't worry about it, just sand it into shape, get it nice and smooth. And then we've picked out with the razor saw after sanding these little lines in here. So the sort of, I'm guessing it's in sections, this bump bar, and it's the joins between them. We put these bits on the hull just as a reminder. I've been looking at some pictures of the lifeboat that I want to build, which is the Scarborough one, and this appears to be not black but actually silver, and also these have a silver cap. That's because this is designed to be run aground for recovery, and it gets dragged along the sand a little bit when it gets dragged onto its trailer. So all of this should be silver to a certain point, and then there's a hole in there that gets where it gets sort of looped and dragged up, and so I'm going to attempt to do that. I think the hardest thing on the build will be marking out the division point between the blue and the black, and then putting the white waterline on it. That's going to be tricky. That having looked at some pictures, it's quite a shallow hull, so the waterline is going from about there to this point here, so it's not as straightforward as you can go up to this line. Although if you're new to modelling, you could probably paint up to that and no one's really going to notice. I think it's also going to be tricky at the back here, because the white line goes just underneath the these little outtakes here, which incidentally should be silver as well. Yeah, so that is all done, and that is now ready for painting. So we can put that on its display base, and it fits rather nicely onto the display base. So yeah, quite often these generic bases don't fit so well. So turning to the cabin, we've got that built up now. There's a little bit of sanding I want to do just here. So I've not done that, so I can show you what we're going to do with that. It's very difficult to get in and sand a tiny area like that. So rather than trying to sand it, we're just going to scrape it back with the back of a knife, take the filler back, and smooth it off. And eventually, as you're doing this, you'll start to see the plastic. And as we're filling a gap, you should be able to leave the filler left in that gap. Now, sometimes the filler will break out and you might have to do it again, or you might consider it a task not worth doing. But you'll see when I've done this in a sec that it is possible to fill that gap that you've got there. There we go. You can see a little white line. That's where the gap was. And that is now dealt with. So the next job is we've got a couple of parts that go on the inside. I need to do a little bit of research because it's suggesting that you paint the inside of this orange, and I think the inside is grey and black. So I need to do a little bit of research, but we've got two parts on the B fret. I don't want to call it a sprue because it's not, it's really a tree. Which, you know, I've not seen trees for a long time. It was more the way it was done back in the 70s, trees. But yeah, we've got these two parts here. So as always, we're going to just test fit them and see how they come together. Have some ejector pins to remove. One on that one and two on that one. Just trim that down a little bit. So this smaller one goes, I think, on this side, is that right? Oh, that way. How does that go? Ah, right, okay. Goes in there like that. Okay. Okay, so it's creating detail on the outside, not detail on the inside. I'd misunderstood what was going on there. Right, okay, now then. Are they different colours? I know that's white on the actual thing, as is that. If they're different colours, we could paint them, and no, they're actually orange. It's just a way of them getting the detail. And then we've got that then going in this one here. Okay, well they fit okay. So we can just glue those in. I just need to sort out sanding the bottoms and making everything nice and smart, so I'll do that off camera. So that actually completes the main part of the build, the main large parts. So this will fit on here, and then after that you're building up the fine details. But what I want to do is paint all of these things at the same time. So We've already primed the hull in a grey, so that's ready to go for painting. We need to prime the orange in a white, but then there's other things later on in the build that are going to be white. So I want to sort of paint everything at the same time and pull it together. Now, if you're building this and you're hand painting it with the paints in the set, then what I'd suggest is at this stage, step 5, you now paint all of this so that you're happy with it, and then paint this before you put the windows in to make sure you don't get any paint on the windows, and then once all the paint is dry and you're happy with it, then you can glue the windows in and attach it, and we'll come to that a bit later on. Because that's ready for paint, we can now have a look at what else we've got to do. So we've already done step 7. We did that earlier on. So these parts can be cleaned up and made ready for painting if we want to. These parts can be cleaned up and made ready for painting. It's obvious where they go. And the same with these parts, which will get which can be painted black at the same time as we paint the hull. And then when we turn over, this is where we've got the rear railings, and they're painted grey, so I think that's the same colour as the deck, so it can be painted at the same time. We'll come back to these railings in a moment, but we've got windows here that could be masked off, ready for being painted with the orange. And then we've got this communications sort of mast, which has got the radar on and radomes and bits and pieces on. And that is largely white, but also black. So we could prime all that in the white when we prime the cabin. And then once again, we've got some things that are a combination of white and black. Where it's a combination of white and black, we're going to prime white so that we can paint white, and then we'll do black afterwards. And then we're pretty much ready for the decals thereafter, which we can do once we've painted the cabin and the hull. We can put all the decals on them before we start adding the fine details, which is a slightly different process to what the instructions recommend. Now, I said I'd come back to the railings. The railings, let me show you these. Now, if you're a beginner modeler, then absolutely use the railings that are in the set and do it as described. But on the actual vessel, these two sets of railings here aren't as they're depicted. So this is limitations of plastic moulding stuff. But actually, between the stanchions isn't bars, there is like a black detachable wire, for want of a better term. I don't know whether it's a rubber or wire, but it's some form of cable, and they start off silver, then they go black, and then there's silver at the couplings. So what I'm thinking about doing is removing these and just adding the stanchions in, and then either drilling holes through and passing through some easy line, which we can glue in at each end, and then where it terminates, and then paint little silver touches in. I think that would work quite well. Or we could do fishing line. Again, if we can drill a hole. So that's my plan. Now, this one here is slightly damaged, so and got a bend on it. So removing that that would get rid of the damaged part as well. So yeah, now not all of them are like that. So these assemblies at the rear, they are full railings. So this section here is a full railing. It's just these two side pieces. Everything else is depicted fairly accurately. So yeah, because it's a starter set, they want to give you the effect, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with this if you want to use it. But I want to try and add a little bit of finesse to the model, and you know, it's a nice little challenge, isn't it? So I'm going to look at it. At this stage, I'm not 100% saying I'm going to do it, but I am going to look at it. So what we'll do is we'll take a little bit of spare sprue here and drill through it as a practice run. Maybe one of the ends here where we've got a sprue gate remaining. Drill through it and see how easy it is to thread some fishing cable through, and that'll make the decision for us, I think. Well, I've just been having a little play, and using a 0.3 drill bit I've been able to thread some fishing wire through a hole quite easily. So I think that's the way I'm going to go, is I'm going to try and put this on for the railings instead of using the railings that are supplied, and I think that'll just add to the finished look personally. So that's what we will do. So what I've managed to do with part C25 is just with a couple of micro drills drill through the holes where it's been blanked with the plastic. There's a couple of depressions there showing it as gaps. To be honest, if you paint it black, you're not hardly going to see it, but just by opening them out and then cutting through with a razor saw to open up the end there, it just adds a little bit of interest, and you'll be able to see the light through it, and it'll just make it a little bit more realistic. So yeah, that's a little tip there. With a little care, you can put the railings here into their location points and use it as a jig to assemble them. So these are 2-part railings, so you can put them in, glue the joint, let that glue dry off, and then you're in a position to be able to paint it as a single piece, which will be a lot easier than trying to assemble it and then touch it up, I think, anyway. So yeah, that's worked out well. So here we have the first stanchion that I've removed from part C44, and you can see if my there we go, if we focus in, I've put a couple of holes in, and that's allowed me to thread my fishing line through. So I'm happy that I have a solution that works. So that's what we're going to do. We will remove all the stanchions, tidy them up and drill them through, and I think that will just add a little bit of finesse to the finished model.
Thanks for watching. Please hit the like button and subscribe if you haven't done so. It's free, and that way you won't miss my first impressions, my tool reviews, my product reviews, and any of my builds, including wooden model kits as well as plastic. It's all free, and if you'd like to support the channel, you can hit my PayPal link in the text below. Every pound goes straight into the channel to keep the cameras rolling and to do more fun stuff for you to watch.